Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Appreciate everybody here being on time. Because not everybody is on time most of the time. We will give everybody maybe 30 or 60 more seconds before we get started. But you're in the right spot. We're glad you're here. Shannon, how's the weather where you're located?
Cold.
Do some small talk. Cold.
Actually, I will say I'm in the DC area, so it given how the weather's been the past like 2 or 3 weeks, it feels a little balmy today. We're around 40, so I shouldn't complain.
Right. Turn on the AC.
Yeah.
Then I'm in Atlanta. It is sprinkling and overcast, so I'm with you. But it's not cold, so I'm happy. I will take that. All right. Well, we appreciate everybody being here. We will get started. I'm sure other people will trickle in, but thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate the time. We're going to talk today about leading change. We're going to discuss how proposal teams, BD, capture teams can adopt AI with confidence. And I'm really excited you're here and are going to invest this time with us. I hope it is very beneficial for you to think about some things that maybe you wouldn't think about otherwise. I lead our solutions engineering team here at pWin. I'm part of the founding team. Started this about 2 years ago, and I've worked with around 50 of our customers over those 2 years deeply. And I also, in my past life, was at a government contractor, leading a business unit and helping lead a generative AI practice. So that's me. I'm really excited, though, to welcome you to the star of the show, which is Shannon Gray. So thanks, Shannon, for being here. Shannon's a change strategist. She also has a background in user experience and design and development. And one of her superpowers, if I can call it that, is blending both technical with change management, with people focused aspects. And she can use those perspectives to ultimately lead enterprise level change transformations. She is a ProSci certified member. She has a Microsoft Service Adoption Specialist. She thinks about all this stuff a lot. And so I'm excited for you to hear from her. Shannon, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
For those of you that don't know anything about pWin, which is probably a few of you if you're here, but a little bit about us, just real quick. Our mission is ultimately to help our customers win more and ultimately do that by improving inefficient and often tedious BD capture and proposal processes, and do that with our AI native platform. We do it across 3 core pillars. One is knowledge management and being able to understand knowledge and information and documentation and be able to turn that into something that is understood for this industry. Next is capture intelligence, meaning how do we take all this bits of information and actually turn it into something of substance and strategy. And then the third is the proposal writing aspect and being able to use those first 2 to write proposals that are high quality, that are valuable. It's not just about speed with AI, but actually something that is produced that is quality. And we ultimately have partnered with 2 companies that you may have heard of before, Shipley being one and Technomile being the other. And we've done this so that ultimately our customers get the best outcomes for this specific industry. So Shannon's going to talk about her adoption suggestions, which is broadly tool agnostic. You can apply it to wherever you are in your AI adoption journey with whatever tool you have or are thinking about. We hope it's ours, but might not be. We will, for the purpose of this conversation, use pWin as the example, as the representative example, so you can see how to think through this. But we think, hopefully you'll learn some about pWin, but you'll see this broader perspective that Shannon will bring to the table and hopefully get a lot of value from that. Here's a simple agenda for our time together. We'll first discuss expectations a little bit around AI, and then we'll spend most of our time talking about the adoption process. We'll talk about a few suggestions at the end and then open up to some Q&A. So we would love to hear your questions. You can drop those as we go through this process, through the session in the Q&A tab in the meeting. And we'll pick at least a few, hopefully more, to then answer live on at the end of the webinar. So please drop that in if you have questions. All right, Shannon, boring stuff out of the way. Let's jump in. AI, obviously still like hot topic number 1 in the world. At the same time, I still see a lot of confusion, unmet expectations. Can you start us off today by helping us understand how AI is different than some past technology solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when you're looking at setting realistic expectations, it's really important to look at the significant shift we're experiencing with AI. There's a lot of talk about what AI can do and how the future is going to change. But successful adoption starts with recognizing what's changed, not just what's possible. This helps us better set better expectations about what it will actually take to navigate the change. And this shift is so significant that personally, I like to think of it as technology before AI and technology after AI. We've got a few examples of that comparison on the slide. And I'm sure everyone here has experienced at least one, if not more, than one technical transformation in the before times. Technology has continually advanced, especially in the last 2 decades, but you probably knew the rhythm of new tech entering the workplace. There was a familiarity, a predictability to it, even if it wasn't always smooth. And that entrance of technology into the workplace was a one to many. So one new system for a department or a whole organization. So success could be defined at scale and training was for the collective. But now, after AI, the tool adapts to each user, which means each person has to develop their own relationship with it. It's no longer one to many, it's one to one. And that means training requires more than feature knowledge. It requires experimentation, mindset shifts, judgment calls, and something that doesn't come naturally to most of us, and that's comfort with ambiguity. And adoption, real meaningful adoption, requires active sponsorship from leadership, protected time for learning, and tolerance for messy exploration and failing forward. So Drew, how does this compare with what you've been seeing in the BD and proposal industry with your work?
Yeah, that's great. So I've talked with a lot of people in this industry over these last 2 years, specifically focusing on AI. And I would say, there's a number of things, and every person doesn't sort of hit all of these. There's different companies and different people that might be more on one side of the one of these points than the other. But the first three are really around unmet expectations, misunderstanding of the technology, right? Like, oh, I've heard about AI, it's magic, right? Which is obviously not true. It's amazing in many ways, but it's not magic. And it can't do anything and everything that you want with just the click of a button. In addition to that, this introduces new security and compliance aspects, and what can people do, what can they not do, and security and compliance teams getting involved. That has been evolving and shifting, which is good. It went from kind of like a no by default early on, and it's no longer really a no by default. Now it's opening up to it can be a yes, but it's a very tedious process to go through typically. So that's an aspect. You mentioned this a little bit just a minute ago around making sure you get leadership buy-in and support, and that typically needs some clear business case, and you need some strategy to sort of make these decisions. You can't just say, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, I picked that one. So those are barriers that people are sort of wrestling with. And then finally, the fuel of AI is content, and that could be other people's content, but it's better when it's your content. For many reasons. And so some people not thinking about the importance of that content and where's their content and how do you sort of bring a content management perspective into the equation. So those are some very specific ones for bidding proposal teams. There's more that I left off the slide, and I'm sure everybody on this webinar has their list as well. So what would you say, Shannon, right, given that these are barriers, what would you say to the audience today on sort of how they start to move forward from that place?
Yeah, so I would say first, you're not alone. Like you mentioned, these are common barriers. Almost anyone engaging with AI for business is facing some or all of these barriers. The bad news is that most of these are out of your direct control as an individual. They actually need to be managed at different organizational levels. They're what I would call systemic barriers, not individual ones. In this webinar today, we're not focusing on those, but it is important to understand that nuance. The good news, though, is that there are elements that are within your control, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So the framework that we want to share with you is really for you and your teams to work at the individual level. There's still support you're going to need at those higher levels, but that's a conversation for a different day. So in my work with teams adopting AI, I've consistently noticed that individual barriers around things like trust or job security actually begin to ease once people find a meaningful way to work with AI. Trust builds through experience. Purpose becomes clear when people solve real problems. Concerns about job security even shift when people see AI expanding their capabilities rather than simply replacing them. But finding that flow isn't straightforward because many of us still struggle with like what to hand off and what to hold on to. The challenge isn't willingness or capability, it's knowing how and when to collaborate, delegate, and refine for different tasks. So the key to this and what our framework is going to focus on today is grounding this in what you already know how to do, not in a new technology that you have to learn and figure out, but starting with the work you do. So we're not going to start with the technology. We're not even going to start with outcomes or barriers. It's good to acknowledge them, but today we're going to start with your work. So we'll share a framework that helps you find meaningful engagement with a tool like pWin by mapping the work you already do to where AI can genuinely help. So how do we start there? How do we start with your work? We start with what you know really well. You've built your career around a proven framework. The Shipley business development lifecycle has been the backbone of proposal management for over 40 years, and for good reason. It works. And whether you follow it to the letter and all of the 90 something steps, I believe it has, or adapt it to fit your team's needs, the stages are familiar territory. And just as you've adapted the Shipley process to create a process that works for you and your team, you'll work with pWin and the framework will show you to discover how you want to collaborate, delegate, and refine the work in your process. And so, Drew, I did want to ask you, I know that the Shipley partnership was really important in pWin's approach when they were becoming a product. Can you expand on that for everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's for the reasons that you're already speaking about and insinuating, right? Which is to build a good solution, you don't need technology. What you actually need to do is understand the business process and the specific functions and features and outcomes you're trying to actually accomplish, and build specific solutions for that, right? And so we knew that from our beginning, and we had many years of proposal experience and being around proposal teams. But we knew that ultimately what we wanted to do was build the best tool for this industry, which means having the best perspective, expertise, thought leadership process in the industry. And so we we're grateful to form this partnership with Shipley, and to bring their expertise into the tool and to get their perspective and co-develop things so that ultimately our users get the best outcomes and the highest quality. It's really easy to build a technology solution with generative AI or any technology these days and just throw it out there and build tech for tech's sake or be a technology looking for a problem. That is not how we've approached this. We said, what does the business need? What do these teams need? And then what makes sense for the different solutions, AI and other traditional technology. So our partnership ultimately means that users, customers get to start on a basis that they already understand, to your point, Shannon, right? They get to operate in a world that they know rather than saying, hey, learn this other world that you don't know. So with that, I'd love for you to now sort of lead us now into this framework that you're going to talk about today.
Yep. So here's our framework. It's simple and straightforward. Collaborate, delegate, refine. That probably feels familiar, hopefully so, and that's intentional. These modes, collaborate, delegate, refine, are how you work with people. It's not how you've traditionally worked with technology, but AI changes that. It's not quite human, but it's not technology as we've known it. And it requires you to engage more like you would with a teammate than a tool. And that shift is exactly why AI adoption feels so different. You're learning to relate to a technology in a fundamentally new way. And here's how to think about each of these modes when you're working with AI. So collaborate. AI works best as a teammate, not a tool that you use in isolation. You bring strategy, context, and nuance. AI brings speed and synthesis. Together, you create something neither could alone. Delegate. This is the hardest part. Figuring out what to hand off, what to hold on to. You're not outsourcing judgment or giving up control. You're directing AI to handle specific tasks while you stay firmly in the loop. And then refine. You refine both what you give AI and what you get back. sharpening your inputs, get better results, and then editing the outputs to add the expertise only you have. This is where your experience matters most and where AI's output transforms from generic to compelling.
Yep, that's great.
So, like we mentioned, collaborate, delegate, refine seems simple enough, right? But collaborate on what? Delegate which tasks? Refine when? So to answer those questions, let's start by breaking down the work you do into smaller parts, right? We've already started with the process that you know, and now we're going to take the work you do and break it down. We'll do this by looking at the different hats you wear on a business development or proposal team. On the slide, we've got a good representation of those hats, right? To give you an idea of what we're talking about. But your team may look a little different, and that's okay. This is a framework you can and should adapt. So we have things like the historian, the compliance manager, the strategist, the architect. It's a lot of hats. And that's kind of the point, because the work that you do is inherently complex with a lot of moving parts. And that's why you need a framework like this that will help you see where AI fits into your process. So, Drew, does this match what you've been seeing engaging with the different organizations that you talk to?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I love the hat analogy, right? Mapping to roles, and we see variation on different organizations and teams on who wears which hats, and are they lucky enough to have fewer hats, or do they have to wear a lot of hats, and what does that look like? And I like thinking about this from a hat perspective, because you break it down in a way that now it feels a little bit more tangible, right? Versus, hey, I, Drew, have to now collaborate with AI. No, actually, how do I think about collaborating AI with a specific context and a specific hat? And those hats obviously map to processes and steps in how teams ultimately deliver results. And so it helps give more specificity. So I love that. I think it's a good, appropriate fit wherever the audience finds themselves wearing one hat or 12 hats. So now that we've talked about that, Shannon, where do we go from here?
Yep. So let's start with the first mode from our framework, which is collaborate. And collaboration feels natural because you're already doing it. You're bouncing ideas off of teammates, dividing up sections, reviewing each other's work. And the visual here shows those human collaboration touch points across different hats. On the next slide, we'll add a new collaborator, and that's pWin. And this could be any AI collaborator, but like Drew mentioned, we're going to use pWin to show you some specific ways to lock this framework in with the tool. And notice now how some of the hats that worked alone before now have support, while others add or expand to their collaboration team. And this is where AI starts to shift how work flows, which does bring us to another important question. Drew, how do you see collaboration happening across the various hats and roles?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's great. I think obviously we all collaborate in some capacity with others around us at work, and so this seems just like a very obvious sort of, okay, now we have this other sort of component to collaboration that we need to think about. So I think that's really great. And then you can think about it also as like, which roles need more collaboration or less collaboration, right? Like on here, like content manager, super important from an AI perspective, but frankly, at this point, largely, if not fully, sort of a human-driven task is to think about what is the content, when do I take content out, when do I add new content, how do I think about, making sure we're curating the right content, still very human, right? Even project management, which again, pWin, from our prioritization perspective, we focus on other areas with a little bit more business value than the project management aspects, but obviously those are important. We don't have that in this graphic yet, but we will, right, as we continue to build out our platform. And so you can now do this mapping, which I think makes a lot of sense. And what I think also is a good way of thinking about this sort of step two is like, what does that collaboration method look like? Like a lot of the other tools out there are chatbots. I would say 90% of them. And chatbots are great in some cases, but it's actually really hard as this random collaborator on the side, because context matters and prompts matter in those cases. And so from a pWin perspective, we've actually tried to remove a lot of that and build them into the workflow inside the tool, which makes it even easier to collaborate with, because you're just doing your work as part of your regular process. that makes a lot of sense. First, now I have to break my workflow or my sort of focus and go to this chatbot and try to prompt the right outcomes, right? So even just thinking about the tool that you're using and how it can be fit collaboration, hopefully in a seamless way as possible, is a key aspect to think through. So where collaboration, okay, hey, I'm going to collaborate with AI based on these hats and these roles, and then what happens from there?
Yep. So up next is going to be delegation. And like I already mentioned, that's the tricky part. And it's about knowing what to hand off, what to hold on to, and how much oversight each task will need. But delegation is where efficiency lives, but it's also where trust, control, and quality concerns can show up. And how well you delegate determines whether AI becomes a productivity multiplier or just another thing to manage. So on the next slide, or on this slide, sorry, we have an abstract but hopefully helpful visualization of delegation that we're going to use to walk you through this mode. So first, let's look at the setup. In the center of the screen, you see a conceptual line of delegation, and the hats we've discussed are lined up along the center. To the left of the line are human teams. To the right of the line is AI. Now let's look at how this could actually work when we start to really think about and push delegation into the tool. So successful delegation comes down to the degrees of delegation you choose for each task or hat in your process. You already do this when collaborating with humans. Even if you've never thought of it this way, this is how delegation works. And you need to do the same thing with AI, but there is a catch. You don't yet know what you can delegate to pWin. So start by thinking about the hats in your process and what you might want to delegate. Then you make space for experimentation and learning, just like you would with a new teammate. This is going to look a little different for each team, but just as you've adapted the Shipley process to fit your workflow, pWin offers features that can support multiple tasks and hats, and you'll determine how to use them and even which features you might be adopting at different times based on what works for your team.
Yeah. So Shannon, I have a question for you because I think sometimes it can be easy to think, hey, we have a tool, we have AI, it's not going to do all of this. I'm going to do none of this. But obviously in this mental model you're presenting, it's more of like this scale factor. So do you think that having AI not do everything is actually a failure because, hey, AI is not, it's not good because I still have to do some stuff, or is that actually appropriate and good?
Yeah, it's definitely not a failure of AI. I would argue that it's appropriate and good. The reality is, there's a potential promise of AI doing all these things. We're nowhere near that yet. So today, AI can't produce compelling content without you. You bring the most important piece, the context that makes output go from generic to compelling. It's your subject matter expertise, your client knowledge, your capture intelligence. These are things that AI cannot replicate. And this is also why the key to effective delegation is knowing what context each hat needs to provide to your AI collaborator. And you might not realize it yet, but you already have a way of thinking about and segmenting context in proposal management and BD work. And it's these 4 questions. So when I asked BD and proposal teams how they think about their work, there's a lot of excellent feedback. But what consistently came up was the way they described these 4 questions that need to be answered whenever you receive an RFP. What have we done? What do we have to do? How will we win? And are we using best practices? These questions map directly to the hats you wear and to the context pWin needs to support each one. So this is how the hats map to those 4 questions. So you're already organizing your work this way. We're just making it visible so you can see where AI fits in, which raises the question, Drew, how does pWin incorporate that context?
Yeah, that's great. So, by these categories, if you will, by these questions, we've layered in some of the features of pWin that actually support that specific question, right? So when somebody says, how will we win? Well, part of that is your pain points and win themes or your customer understanding and discriminators, right? And so pWin has a feature that helps pull content out and embed those in as an input and then as an input into the writing process so that is a part of the output, right? Which is really important for, again, compelling and quality content. It could be competitor intel, right? How are you layering ghosting strategies, right? That's a key part that you want to weave in. How is your solution appropriate and different, right? And so pWin has features there for that question. If it's the another question like, what do we have to do, right? That's very driven by the solicitation and your outline and a compliance checklist and compliance reports, and we have features to do that. It could be, what have we done, right? That's fundamentally searching your content and finding where you've done relevant aspects before and putting that in a past performance volume or weaving that in as proof points inside of your draft, right? So there's features for that. And then are we using best practices, right? Which goes back to sort of the Shipley partnership we brought to the table from the beginning, right? If we want to produce the highest quality output, not just AI slop, we need to have fundamentally those best practices woven into the fabric of the platform. And so that shows up in our whole algorithm, in the workflows, as well as different components like a refinement chat or a hallucination report. So that ultimately, as part of using an AI tool or our AI tool, you're getting things that are specifically addressed to those hats that you need as part of your process. So, okay, so we've hit collaboration, we've hit delegation, and now we go to refinement. All right, Shannon, what's that?
Yeah, so refinement. This is actually where I think a critical insight comes in, and that's that refinement isn't just about editing outputs. It's actually pretty circular, and it can happen at the start, in the middle, and at the end. Definitely at the start and at the end, and even I think when you really get into a good flow with AI, you'll be doing it in the middle too. So if we look at the table on the side, you'll see a few tasks that we've called out that are a part of proposal management and BD work. And they are marked for input refinement, output refinement, or both. So input refinement means shaping and sharpening what you give AI. So being clear about context, more specific about what you need. So take curate content, for example. Drew already mentioned that's right now a very human thing, right? You have to build up that knowledge repository and make sure that the content in there is relevant, accurate, and what you might want reflected in future proposals. The AI can only work with what you give it. So that's all input refinement. You're directing AI to the right sources, the right themes, the right focus, so it knows how and where to start. Then output refinement is what most people think of, right? Editing what AI gives you back. So if we look at like the bottom of the table, optimize for client-specific nuances and tone, pure output work. Only you can add that client knowledge. Where would AI get that from, right? And notice the tasks in the middle, like sharpen when themes, speak to customer understanding, and some of the others. These require refinement as both inputs and outputs. You refine your input to get better initial results, and then refine the output to bring it to excellence. So, and here's a few key things that I want to share that make refinement really effective. So first, you have to know what good looks like, right? This is why your subject matter expertise, all your years of experience matter. Because if you don't know, like if you can't evaluate quality, you can't refine well. And it takes time to build the expertise and gain the experience. It helps you really know what quality looks like, whether a proposal can win or not win. 2, refinement and delegation work together. The better your delegation, so providing clear context, the right task breakdown, the less heavy lifting refinement requires. So good input reduces the need for extensive output cleanup. And lastly, refinement is where you learn. And this is really, really, really important. Refinement is where you learn. As you refine AI outputs over time, you'll discover what to ask for upfront versus what to fix after. Refinement teaches you how to collaborate and delegate better. It's a feedback loop that makes you more effective over time. And this goes back to like why that protected time for learning and experimentation is so key, because this is how you develop a really meaningful relationship when working with an AI tool. So Drew, and for you, like working in so many with pWin's customers, do you see a difference in outcomes based on users and companies' investments in refinement and the space they create for that?
Yes, absolutely. And I think the users who get the most value in the tool go through this refinement, this learning, experimentation stage, and it ultimately magnifies the results they get, right? When you come into it and say, hey, I just want to do the same thing every time, and I just want it to do what I want it to do, and I don't take some amount of time of trial and error and seeing, oh, if I did this, this happened, or if I did that, that happened. Oh, I should do the one that actually results in the better outcomes. Oh, hey, I should dive in with the customer success team and actually make sure I truly understand what's going on so that I know how to use the tool the best, right? You absolutely will get value quickly in pWin, but over time, as you understand these different aspects and you do the refinement sort of loop, then yes, the output, the outcomes go up dramatically. Like I think that our biggest users, the ones who are winning the most, spend time going deep enough to understand it. Absolutely. Okay, so that's really good. 3-step model. Hopefully that makes sense for the audience. Hopefully we'll have some questions in the Q&A here. So another plug to drop your questions there because we're going to go take some in just a little bit. We have a few other suggestions now. Okay, hey, I've got this model. That makes sense. Obviously, you have some homework to sort of apply it to your space, your process, your hats, and then hopefully share it with others and get other people on board. What are some other guidance that we could do? So we have a few ideas just to leave you with so that this can hopefully augment, complement your collaborate, delegate, refine process. One, big fans of champions and building champions, because where you can internally build some people who have gone through that process of refinement, being able to teach other people quickly is a game changer. So everybody doesn't have to do the exact same refinement every time. You can actually learn corporately together, right? And so thinking about that, doing it in waves, starting small and scaling it from there, not trying to boil the ocean at one time, are some sort of key tips. You can see a few others there. I hope we have some leadership roles on this call today. Shannon, I'm just curious on the last point. I know you're passionate and opinionated about the last one. If there are some leaders listening right now, what would you sort of suggest to them to be able to empower teams to be successful here?
Yeah, I would say I think the biggest challenge for leaders right now is there is a impetus, right? AI's got to come into the business. It's got to start changing things. And there's a big push to like adopt tools and be more efficient and be more productive. But it's, as we've looked at, it's not an easy tool to adopt. Fundamentally different than anything that we've done before. And so this concept, it's simple, but the idea that you've got to slow down to speed up is so important. And I think as a leader, you have to sit with that tension of what the executives and the board might be asking for, because they want AI and they want results really quickly. But you're not realistically going to be able to get those if you don't slow down a little bit and give your teams the space and the protected time that they need to actually sit with this tool and learn. It's not like any other technology that you've rolled out before, and they've got to be able to do that. They've got to be able to experiment and have a few failures. Like particularly when you look at the different types of work, proposal management work is high stakes. That RFP drops, you've got a timeline that's usually pretty tight, and millions of dollars are on the line, right? And your like as a proposal manager, whether you win or not, right? Do you miss anything because of compliance, because you were rushing? Your reputation's on the line. So when you have a high stakes environment like that, it's best to start with not real work. Give the teams some space to work with something that's low stakes so they can experiment more, because nobody wants to experiment when the stakes are high. But that creates that need for the protected time. So allow your team to start with maybe an RFP that's old, do some experimentation so they can learn the tool, learn how to bring their hats and delegate appropriately in the tool to then get that speed and that momentum moving forward. And I know that's hard tension to sit with, but I think that's probably the most important thing leaders can do today when it comes to AI.
Great. Yeah, thanks for that. So that's onboarding. We also have a few thoughts of how you think about it post-onboarding. And so how do you mature with an AI product over time? I think one, just to reemphasize this, thinking about your content management process and curating that content, because it's so important to the outputs. So that's one, and everybody is at a different place on that sort of content management maturity. Do they have a process? Do they follow the process? Do they have content managers? Do they not? Who wears those hats? Like we talked about. So I think that is a big one. And then just knowing that the process is going to change and evolve. And I like, the point where you talk about the line of delegation is going to change over time. In the beginning, it might be more in the middle, and over time, it maybe shift more and more to AI. I do want to ask you sort of one final question, Shannon, before we start to move into Q&A soon. But up front, you said sort of embracing ambiguity, which this slide talks about embracing change and evolution. Those things are always fun. I'm just curious if you have any tips for people out there on how they do that. And yeah, some people might be a little squeamish about that idea because it can be so uncertain.
Yeah, I do think so. It's a chicken and an egg problem to some extent, because I think the best way to embrace ambiguity is to be able to experiment, right? And see what it looks like when something's pretty good, really good, and then it kind of totally missed the mark. And so being able to sit with AI and kind of see the range of outputs that it's going to give you, and then learning how to sharpen your inputs to improve those so you're doing less work. In a lot of ways, people compare AI to working with a human all the time, but it is very similar, right? When you hire a new person to your team, so let's say you expand your team, you bring on an individual, and you are not adding pWin as a collaborator or any other AI tool, you're adding another human. There are some things that you'll be able to do, right? You'll be able to put out a job rec, you'll be able to interview that person, you'll have some sense of their strengths and weaknesses, but really at the end of the day, a new hire to your team is a risk. All new hires are a risk because you don't know each other yet. And so you sit with that ambiguity and getting to know them from the get-go. It feels easier to influence them and give them direction because it's something that you've always done, right? Learning how to work with others and collaborate. But if you can think back to that same sort of ambiguity that comes with a new teammate, you have to learn their habits, you have to learn their communication preferences, you have to learn, how they show up for their work. Some people are very quiet, but working in the background, and you're like, I don't know if they're going to get this done. And then bam, they get it done. You learn these things about people. You have to do that with AI. The difference is just you need to be able to sit with the tool and experiment, because the change in mindset shift is as much for you as it is as opposed to the other person that's joining your team. So I know that's kind of probably soft in giving a direct answer, but I think that's the thing about ambiguity. The only way you get comfortable with it is by creating space for it and acknowledging that it's necessary, I think is also very key. In change management, there's a lot of phrases that we use, but one of them is you have to name it to tame it. If you don't call it out and acknowledge that something exists, whatever that thing is, whether it's friction, a barrier, tension, or something like this, being able to sit with ambiguity, you can't address it. There's no way to move through it if you can't acknowledge that it exists. So that's kind of my best advice. There's probably some better advice online, but I would say that's the biggest thing is acknowledge that it's necessary, acknowledge that it's messy, and be willing to do it.
No, that's great. That's great. I love two things in particular you said. One, experimentation, right? Like making something real, right? Turning it into actually something you can do and see is great. And then, yeah, name it to tame it. I like that phrase. All right. Just one more sort of bit on pWin. If you don't know us, if you haven't had a chance to see our platform in action, we would love to do that with you. You can sign up for a demo on the right side of the screen, scanning the QR code, or just go to our website at pWin.ai. We have multiple ways for you to learn more about pWin. We'd love to do that. And I mean, even today, I was talking with an enterprise customer about how pWin fits into their process and their workflow. Like really a lot of what we were just talking about just now. We love to do that. We can talk about your process and how we see different customers apply pWin because it can be different. pWin is very flexible. Just like you modify the Shipley most likely in your process, you can do that with pWin to fit wherever you are. So we'd love to do a demo, show you what we have, and talk about how that could be valuable for you. If you are a Gartner subscriber, we were recently the only GovCon in the recent RFP response management applications market guide. So you can check that out and learn more about us there. So with that, we will go to Q&A time. So give me just a second to hop over to the Q&A tab. If you have questions, please drop them in. Let's start with this one. What would you say are the critical functionalities of an AI tool that truly impact proposal success versus the features that may not add real value? Shannon, I'll take that one, and you can add to it if you want. I mean, that's a good question, and I mean, I would say there's some obviously contextual relevance to who you are, what hats you wear, your company, what your goals are, where there's friction in the process. I think you do need to think about that. All AI tools are not created the same, and many tools might look nice with shiny bells and whistles, versus being able to create actual quality output. That's something we have been very passionate about from the beginning. We don't, there are a lot of tools that create AI slop. Our writing process is very detailed, written with Shipley, so that it tries to mimic what you all do when you write content, to bring all these different inputs, right, from your outline structure, solicitation text, compliance items, your instructions, requirements, your solution approach, your win themes, your pain points, your competitive intel. Like, there's a lot that you all do that write or contribute to this process. That has to be woven together in one narrative that sounds like one person wrote it. That's really hard. And there's a lot of tools out there, ChatGPT or others, where they can create content that fast, but it's actually not that helpful. It just looks nice, but it's actually not of substance. To me, my main recommendation for this question would be find a tool that is not just fast, but actually focuses on quality, and use those tools, because that's where you're going to get the most value, not ones that just give you text really fast. So I don't know, Shannon, if you have anything to add to that.
I'll add something small. And I think the critical functionalities could be really subjective depending on the individual. But one of the things that I heard a lot when I was talking to different proposal teams is that, many proposal writers, or you wear many hats, but one of the things you are is a professional writer. And so some, not all, said, the writing's kind of the easy part for me. I can do that quickly. But I think what came out to be different was that then when we talk about, like, okay, so writing wasn't necessarily the hard part, but what is the hardest part for you as a proposal manager? And consistently at the top of the list was getting access to the SMEs, because the SMEs are really critical, and they hold all this knowledge that's going to make the RFP really competitive and compelling. But anybody who's worked in this, and Drew and I have been SMEs. I spent a lot of time being like one of those SMEs that the poor proposal managers are trying to chase down. But often they have a full-time job, right? And so getting their time and attention is really difficult, especially if you need them to write for you. So the value of this really well-written draft becomes not just that it did the writing for you, but now instead of asking your SMEs to generate content for you, which from a lot of this music, we get white page stress. You're like, oh man, I have so many things to do. I have 100 meetings this week, and I got to figure out how to sit down and write. And instead of asking the SMEs to generate, you can give them a well-written draft that they can evaluate and respond to. And that's so much easier and so much approachable for SMEs. So I think even that focus that pWin has on writing like a really good quality draft can even change how you potentially engage with your SMEs and bring down some of the stress and maybe procrastination they have around giving you those first drafts of that really compelling content that you need to get into the proposal.
Yeah, that's great. The process overall is very important, right? Not just write something, write something. Okay, another question, and please keep them coming, everybody. What success indicators would you recommend for tracking whether an AI initiative is actually improving proposal outcomes? Shannon, I feel like that's a good one for you to take versus me.
Yeah, so I think I would even start a little bit earlier before you're tracking improving proposal outcomes, because to get to that part, you got to give the time some, and this is what I think where change management has such a big role to play in AI. Got to give that time, right, for experimentation, for learning, for people on the team to build confidence working with their new AI team member. And so I would actually, before you even get to improving proposal outcomes, I would start tracking things, not even just usage, because, that's a clear signal of whether or not people are potentially experimenting and enjoying the tool, but there's other things that you can put in place. I would set up pilots and have check-in times with teams to understand how they're breaking their work down, what parts of the tool are working well for them. Because pWin, like Drew mentioned, and hopefully you saw on the slide when we showed all the features, it's a robust tool. It's not just a chat. It's a very robust tool. And different teams may find value in different features. A lot of that's just going to depend on the size of your team and how your process works. So I think starting first with how people are learning and engaging with the tool and where they're finding the most value is the first thing that you want to measure and get feedback on. Some of that's going to be just through conversations, maybe doing pulse surveys to kind of understand sentiment in the first month or so that people are working with the tool. From there, you've now identified the parts of the tool you want to leverage the most. Once you know which parts you're leveraging, you'll have a better sense of what do we think this tool is going to do to help us in our proposals and the outcomes that we get. And from that point, you can sit down and say, okay, here's what we want to track. We believe, because of the experimentation that we've done and how we understand the tool and how we want to use it, it's going to do these things for us. It's going to create these outcomes. Then you can come up with metrics to measure those outcomes. It could be something as direct as your win rate. It could be something much more complex on potential feedback you get on proposals that you don't win the award on. I think there's a really big range. And I think the metrics that you want are going to be highly contextual to how your org works, probably even the industries that you're in too. But I think to shape those, instead of giving you like and this is probably like the consultant answer, it depends, and giving you like a specific metric, I think starting with some specific metrics on how people are adopting the tool, using it, and seeing its value, you should let that drive then what successful outcomes look like for you. Because that's going to be a little bit different for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. That's good. I'm going to flip back one slide just so people can continue to see that QR code if they need it. All right, let's see. I have a question from Cami. Capability to capture competitive intelligence, winning proposal, and compare to in-house proposal to identify differences, and capability to document, report the differences. Okay, so if I'm understanding that, Cami, hopefully I am, and would love to on another call with you dive deeper into that. But do we have the ability to take two proposals side by side and then identify differences? We don't have that one built into the tool formally. There are some ways you could probably get to some of that inside the tool, but not as robust as our other features, which are really custom built and deeply engineered. So love to talk to you about that. We do have a feature around being able to pull in debrief, like RP debriefs, and incorporate those learnings into the process. So that's a feature we have coming soon, which is related, but obviously not the exact same thing you're asking. All right, another question. What would you say are becoming essential skills for people in a content management role?
I'm
Shannon,
happy to do.
Yeah, I'll give you first stab at that, and I have some thoughts after you.
Yeah, so this one's a little near and dear to me. When I started my career working in tech, I did, especially when I was doing development and then UX, a lot of internet and knowledge management work. So content management is something I spent a lot of time working on. And in that world, the promise of AI was always something that you talked about and waited for. But what you're going to see, I think, is a growth in conversations about content management, because it's data at the end of the day, right? And AI can't work without a very strong data foundation. And so with data, you're often talking about three types, right? There's structured, semi-structured, unstructured. Structured is what you think about like in a database, right? It has like columns and rows, and the content is clearly defined with different types of metadata. So it's easier for machines to sort and recognize. Semi-structured could be something like an image where we can identify exactly what it is. It's an image. What's in the image then becomes unstructured and takes different technology to be able to identify. So there's parts of it that are easy for machines to identify, parts that require AI. And then unstructured, which is the kind of content you need to manage for for proposals, like your past performances, is written content, right? It's everything probably that you've seen in SharePoint for a really long time. And so I think the role of the content manager is going to grow because there's knowledge that the organization needs to apply to that content for AI to do something really meaningful with it. It can do something without it, but you'll even see this if any of you have started to work with Unleashing Copilot, M365 Copilot, you'll see this here too. The structure of your SharePoint content is going to have a direct impact on how well M365's Copilot can work for you, because it's going to look at the metadata that's attached and the managed properties. So a content manager needs to be able to connect dots. They need to be able to have a good understanding of the company's business, the customers, the type of work that you're going for, things that really differentiate you as a business, because they're going to be the ones going into this unstructured content, maybe sometimes even semi-structured, and applying the managed properties, the metadata, the details that need to be there for AI to do something really meaningful with that content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. I would let that answer satisfy the main question. I would add just one more piece of color to that, which is understanding the tool and how it works, which you're speaking about. But not all tools use content the same, and so having some understanding of that, I think, is also really important. And so if you use a general purpose tool like a ChatGPT, if security allows, or Copilot inside your walls, those are general purpose tools. They're very smart on lots and lots of things, but they're not specifically built for this industry. They don't really know the difference between past performance, past response, proof point, CPARs, corporate info, security information, right? Like it can know a little bit of that, but it is got to just sort of infer that. We built our tool, when you bring content to the tool, to deeply analyze it, to understand that. And that matters because if you understand the content coming in, to your point, Shannon, then if the tool understands that in the best context, it can use it in the best context to create new output that is the highest quality, right? And so I think just in the content management aspect, that would be one thing to just think about, is making sure you understand how the tool uses content and where's that content coming from. Is it using other people's content or only your content? And that's a worthwhile conversation to have with any tools you consider. All right, next question. We'll see if this might be the last for time reasons. John asks, what are good metrics to follow to monitor usage among a team? Shannon, you want to take a stab at that, or want me to go first?
Yeah, I can start. So one thing I'll start when it comes to usage is when you look at usage metrics, one of the main things you're going to want to do is make sure that you have a sense of what factors might be influencing that usage metric in a given time, right? So if you launch an AI tool and you are intentionally creating that space for experimentation, you might see really high usage numbers, right? Because people are getting in there, they're digging around, they're starting to learn. And if you do like a structured pilot and you have, say, labs or cohorts where people come together, you might even see particular spikes on particular days, right? When that training is occurring. So for that, when you're rolling it out, you would reasonably be able to expect spike on days that there's cohorts or labs happening. Then I would look for, what does the usage metrics look like in between that? When there's intentional time protected and some sort of facilitation or coaching or training provided by the organization, look at the usage in between that. Did people take something away from that training and have continual usage? Your numbers should drop significantly after, say, a day of training, but you still want to see who's using it after that, and particularly in between if you do multiple trainings. Then I think you want to look at individuals and their roles, and also looking at, as an organization, if, let's say, of the hats that we looked at, there's a couple of hats that aren't going to lean into pWin. Your organization looked at it and said, you know what, we feel like doing it this way will support us better, but we're going to use these features and functionality in pWin. You're going to want to identify who wears those hats that are using pWin, that are intentionally using pWin, versus those that decided to stay out of it, and make sure that you're not conflating the usage, right? Because that group that's going to not has decided that group of hats that aren't using it, their usage is going to be low. You want to factor that out, right? So I think a lot of times with usage metrics, these sort of nuances get overlooked, and the results become very biased or skewed. So I'm kind of giving you some details there about when you're looking at usage metrics, you want to look at the time period, right? Are we at rollout? Are we where we're expecting continual active use? What's happening with RFPs in general? Like, do we have a lot going on at the moment? Like, in that time box of usage, what was happening? And then think about, from an organizational perspective, do we expect usage to be steady, spiking, or dropping in this moment? Because just seeing like spikes or growth doesn't really tell you why that's happening. So you have to bring all of that together. I think long term, you want to see sustained usage for the roles that are going to be actively using the tool, but you're always going to see these spikes and drops, and you want to have the context of why those things might be happening too, versus just saying, well, we've got a drop in usage, we have a problem. You may not, but just remember that usage metrics, while helpful, are signals, not answers. Most quantitative metrics are only signals. They are not insights or answers. So if you see a change in them that feels concerning, that means you need to dig deeper and look at the context of what might be influencing that, not looking at just the metric itself.
Great. I will leave it at that. It's a better answer than I would give. All right. We are at almost to the top of the hour, so we will close here. For everybody that stayed with us, thank you so much. We really appreciate the time. We hope you found this valuable. Please jump in and let us know if you have further questions. We would love to get together and show you the products and talk about your desires. So scan the QR code or come to our website. And thank you so much. We hope you have a great rest of the day.